Hi everyone, my name is Karen Shanung and I'm an IT consultant and part of the CodaBears team. Welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. During today's presentation, I'll cover the basic items needed for creating a quote header and line. Then I'll demonstrate using the engineering options to add materials and operations required to make that part. The quote worksheet will show the calculations based on what I entered using the costs for the materials and operations and include a total for the setup and labor hours section and a total combines each cost for burden, labor, material, subcontract, and material burden. So in order to start a quote, we're going to first click the plus sign on the opportunity quotes page to add a new quote. On the opportunity quote details card, which is also known as your quote header, you add your customer ID, your ship to, the ship via and terms should default in if you set them up on your customer, otherwise you can change them also, and then you can add your due date if you want to change it from what is automatically set up also. And then make sure to set up any additional fields and your quote header is as complete as you need for your business processes. Once you're happy that you have your quote header showing your needed information, you can save quote and move on to adding one or more quote lines. So now you can move to the lines card or the lines detail. Here we're in the lines detail, and again you can click the plus sign to add a new line. You can enter an existing or new part, a description, and your expected quantity. And if you know the customer would like to receive this part, if you know when they'd like to receive this part, you can put in the need by dates and due date here. And to help with quoting statistics, you might also want to enter values into the best case, worst case, and confidence fields for this line. And then you'll click save for this line, which is up by the plus sign there. Now you can begin the engineering process by clicking the engineering button shown down here for the line. So the engineering section in the tree can be used to view all the different existing parts, operations, capabilities, resource groups, and resources related to this line for engineering if you already have items in there. You can expand or collapse each card as needed, and you can use the overflow menu to choose the auto load engineering data option, and you can choose to load parts and operation master details. You can also choose the other ones, but a lot of times that's normally what you would use is just the parts and operation master details. And if you don't auto load the engineering information, you can go ahead and right click either the materials if you're adding a material or the operations if you're adding an operation or a subassembly. You can right click there to add a subassembly one at a time. Basically, if you right click there, you can add a material one at a time or an operation one at a time. Today's presentation, as mentioned at the beginning, is a basic overview. The calculations do not use all the fields that may be in play for the engineering, but the basic fields are used. The main goal today is to show you that you can build your parts in quote entry and then get your calculations for materials and operations based on the factors that you built into the materials and operations. So on this screen, we show an example of adding materials to the line of your quote. The quantity per parent and the unit cost should be filled in either manually or by pulling in the cost from the material part. If you have a supplier price list set up, the price will pull in based on the quantity per parent entered on the quote material and the quantity breaks entered on your supplier price list. The resulting material cost will be for a quantity of 1 on the final part. If the quote uses quantity breaks, you can also multiply the material cost by the quantity in the quantity breaks grid for the selected row to match the result on the worksheet. Calculations for the materials could be more complicated depending on other fields that are used in your calculations, so you should verify your results based on the way you have defined your materials. So here we can show our calculation for the quantity for each different material is shown here. The quantity per parent times the unit cost. So here we have 2 times the unit cost of 55 equals 110. And the second material, the quantity per parent is 5 times $1 is $5. And then our total material cost for this line is $115. I also added a material burden rate only for the second material. The calculation for this total material burden cost is taking the total material cost for that part, so only the second line, which was $5, and multiplying it times 0.25 or 25%, I'm sorry, and that gives you $1.25, which is your total burden cost for this line multiplied by your material burden rate. This example slide shows adding operations to the line on your quote. The setup time for the operation is multiplied by the sum labor rate. So in other words, here are our setup times, and you have 0.25 times the sum of your labor rates in the scheduling resources. Here, the labor rate summed together is $20. So we have 0.25 times 20 plus the production hours times the sum labor rate. So for the production hours, that's your production standard calculated out to be how much time it takes per hour. In this case, it's 1 hour. And again, by the sum of your labor rate, which is 20. So we have calculations here equals $25. We also have the burden rate calculated for these operations. So you use, again, the setup hours times the sum of the burden rate. In this case, we have the burden rate set for $50 for both setup and production. And we have our setup hours again at 0.25 and our production hours at 1 hour. And the calculation calculates out to be $62.50 using the example shown here. And these calculations work if you have pieces per hour as your production standard format and the quantity break is 1 on your worksheet. If you have another quantity break, you can multiply these results by that quantity to get your labor and burden costs that are shown on your worksheet. You may also have to factor in other items if you have set up crew sizes or scheduling blocks or similar fields that have values other than 1 and can affect these calculations. Using subassemblies, you probably also need to factor in the quantity per parent, and calculations for the operations are quite complicated, so you should verify your results based on the way you have defined your operations. On this slide, we show a second operation example for a subcontract operation. And the calculation for subcontract operations is pretty straightforward. To get the subcontract cost, you multiply the quantity per parent and the unit times the unit cost. So here we see the quantity per parent and the unit cost. So we have 1 times 2, and that gives us the subcontract cost. Notice the checkbox for indicating the operation is a subcontract operation, and also viewing your operations in the tree, you'll see the subcontract operation has a different little symbol in front of it where it looks like it's 2 arrows versus 1 arrow in the tree. So here's a look at part of the quote worksheet where the hours section is shown, and we have some additional formulas to show how Epicor calculated these operations. So the setup hours burden for all operations and the burden production for all operations are shown here. And so the burden setup is 0.25. We only have that on operation 10 and we don't have any on operation 20. And the production hours is 1, and again we only have that on operation 10 and not on operation 20. The labor setup hours. The labor is also takes into account your operation details. So you have the total of 0.5, 0.25 only on operation 10 again, but it has two operation details equals the zero point 0.5 shown here. And it's similar for the labor production hours. Again, we have 1 hour on our operation 10, which has two operation details, so that multiplies out to the two total production hours. So this is where the main part of the calculations show up on your worksheet, and you can see based on our previous slides, we have the totals that we had mentioned. First, we had the materials at $1.15 and the material burden at $1.25. And then we had our burden and labor costs from the operations that we previously showed were these amounts, $62.50 and $25. And then we added the subcontract operation was the last item that we added. And we can see that adding all these equals our total cost of $205.75. And during my next Lunch and Learn presentation, we'll add in quantity breaks, markups, and commissions to the calculations shown on the worksheet card.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great afternoon.
Want more Codabears Lunch and Learn? Check out our channel for more videos or contact us on our website for registration information.